The whole repair shop rotates around the fact that I want to be a project car guy, and I am project car expert level. Do I finish them? Now that's another question.
Colin Chapman, the founder of Lotus, well, his motto was to simplify and add lightness. Now, as you can see, this concept is completely lost on me. Count them. 1, 2, 3. Yes, those are 3 Weber carburetors, and they're attached to a iron block 6-cylinder engine. Now, it's not all bad. I mean, I did manage to complete a car from scratch. From scratch. I built every piece on this car by the age of 30. But what I did get for my efforts was a car that had great straight-line acceleration, but really sucked cornering. Essentially, I created a muscle car. Massive understeer, then snapping into wild oversteer. It was fun while it lasted. Everywhere I went, a crowd gathered, and everybody wanted to ride in it. Just like all good things, they eventually come to an end. And in June 2011, I blew up that 6-cylinder Datsun motor for the last time.
When I started looking at it critically, I realized that a lot of my welds, a lot of my, the work I did in my 20s probably wasn't quite the same standards that it is nowadays. So I've gone through the car from pretty much this point forward and backwards, and I have been rebuilding the car.
I'm definitely not going to be accused of being the quickest, but I finally learned my lessons from Colin Chapman, and I took out that big slug of a motor. And so began the process of installing a much lighter Nissan SR20 DET motor. Now, just in case you're wondering, that old Datsun motor got rebuilt and put back into a car that it really belongs in. My best buddy Pat's beautiful 240Z. Just listen to this thing. Well, first off, of course, it's going to be the engine mounts. You'd be amazed at what you can build with a little bit of cardboard and a glue gun. Once the engine was mounted, I needed to focus on the front end. The front end was all messed up. I think I slept through my whole grade 2 because my geometry was all over the place. My upper control arm was mounted to the chassis too high, and the original steering rack I used was out of a Chevy Chevette, making it far too wide and causing the pivot point for the inner tie rod to be way out of whack. Can you say bump steer? So after staring at it for a few weeks, I decided to completely gut the front end, remove everything, and start over again, replacing it piece by piece. I think I could go to the moon and back in a shorter time than it would take me to turn that old Chevette rack from lock to lock. So where does one go when they need an answer? Well, Google, of course. And Google showed me that I could take a Mazda Miata steering rack, I could shorten it, I could cut 5.5 inches out of the rack and re-weld it back together, and I would end up with a really quick steering rack. Once I had the front end all tack welded together, I decided to work on the cooling system, the intercooler, and the oil cooler. See what I could fit in that very limited space. My biggest problem was how was I going to get fresh air to the intercooler, which was sitting behind my radiator. My solution was to build a fresh air duct system that would grab air beside the radiator, in the fresh air stream, and as well as underneath the rad from the bottom.
Here we have the oil cooler, which I added all this. All the new piping is all new. And there we go. That steering rack has a very interesting story that goes with it, because I don't know if you can see it or not, but right here is where I sliced it in half. I sliced the rack in half. So the rack is out of a Miata. So this throttle body presented a fair challenge. As you can see, the original throttle body is here. It normally mounts to the manifold, which is there. Now, that would have put the actual throttle plate actuator there into the chassis of the vehicle right here. So in an attempt to not have to restructure the vehicle right here, I made a new adapter to move that to a different angle. It has worked out fairly well. A little chunk of this little tube right here, of this curve, find the right piece in there, and I'm kind of cut it out, and then I'm going to...
I make no claims to be anything but an amateur machinist. You're more than welcome to tell me what I'm doing wrong, but chances are I'm just going to ignore anything you tell me.
It's pretty much exactly 82 millimeters each.
I used the old throttle body gasket as a template. I made 2 identical plates. Using the boring bar, I got as close as I could to the original size of the throttle body. I ordered a mandrel bent intake tube to match my size, and then I just took a chunk out of it just where it started to bend, which gave me just the right angle I needed to move the throttle body away. TIG welded it up, and voila! While a Super 7 is really fun to drive, I think it'll have something in common with the Tesla truck. I decided my car was going to be different, so I laid a new carbon fiber dash, mocked up a little diagram of what I wanted my gauge pod to look like, transferred it to a piece of aluminum a 1/4 inch thick, went mad with a hole saw, bored out every hole so that it was exactly the gauge size, drilled a whole bunch of holes for LEDs, 3D printed some switch bezels, and thought to myself, I got the beginnings of a pretty good looking dash. Then I said, what the heck, let's even work on the exhaust. My ultimate moment of madness was when I decided that a simple turn signal switch on the dash would not do. So I chased that rabbit down the hole and I wasted at least 40 hours making it turn, signal, stalk, and switch. And now for the moment of truth. Well, I think I've talked enough about that car. If you want to see more, you can let me know. Being a teenager in the best generation, the 80s, of course, led me to a couple shows, Magnum PI and Miami Vice. Now I realize Magnum came first, but I really fell in love with Ferraris from Miami Vice. While I'd love me a 365 Ferrari, you can see that ain't gonna happen. Thankfully, a 308 is still reasonably affordable, and even more so when it's a project car 308. I know, I've heard it before, the most expensive Ferrari is a cheap one, but I'm gonna prove you wrong. You can follow this link back to the Ferrari updates. I'm just getting started with it. Not so much a project car, but a work in progress. Here we have this 1966 912. Wow, I never thought I'd really enjoy a Porsche that much, but this little thing is freaking awesome. How can one have so much fun going so slow?
Is your big run?
This is gonna be the money run.
The money run.
Yes, I know it's hard to believe, but that's full throttle. Now this car doesn't actually need a full restoration, it just needs some love. So if old Porsches are your thing, well, I've got a link on the screen right here, and that'll take you back to my little playlist for the videos I do have for this car. Last but not least is this Puma. Now a Puma, whatever you want to call it, was made in Brazil and shipped to North America in kit form. It featured a Volkswagen drivetrain built on a Karmann Ghia or Brasilia chassis. Given the latest craze for electrifying Volkswagen products and the fact that I've always wanted a resto mod a car, I thought this would be a great project for the guys in the shop to work on. Yeah, I know it's a big project, but the guys are actually looking forward to it. If you have any input that you want to throw at us, we'd love to hear it. Thank you for watching vlog number 3. If you've gotten this far, I appreciate it. And I would also appreciate a subscribe. Plus, if you are into reading content, you can always go to the Globe and Mail, if you're in Canada, the Globe and Mail, and you can see my weekly comment, or my weekly column called Lou's Garage. Anyways, thank you, and I'll see you at the next video. Bye-bye.